Hey, this is Robbie Baseball from the Dingers Fantasy Baseball Podcast, and you are listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 317, Breakin 2, Electric Boogaloo, movie review. Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Time once again for another movie review. Derek and I are going to go back to 1984 to review the sequel of all sequels, Breakin 2 Electric Boogaloo. Derek, I didn't even realize when I went to read the title that it rhymed 3 times. Yeah, Breakin 2 Electric Boogaloo movie review.
Yeah.
God,
I could hear you sort of chuckling a little bit as well. We're here to have fun.
Yeah, well, before we get to this wonderful film, Derek, what pop culture have you been able to take in since we last spoke, my friend?
All right. Well, if you recall over the last few episodes, I hadn't really had a lot to talk about because I hadn't really had a lot of downtime.
Yeah, you've been busy.
We didn't record last week, and I basically made up for lost time. I have this long list, so I'm going to run through a bunch of these. Some of these things are just older movies, and I'm just going to acknowledge that I watched them, but that's about it. But I'll start with the new one. We went to the theater to see the new release that came out this weekend. It's a movie called Mickey 17. Now you
mentioned that movie that you read the book or something first?
Yes.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago you read the book.
I read the book. Well, I listened to the audio a couple of weeks back, knowing the movie was coming out. So the book is actually called Mickey 7, and the movie, they changed it to Mickey 17. I won't get into the specifics, but the idea is that the character of Mickey, when he dies, he can be cloned and brought back to life. And so that's why whether he's Mickey 7 or Mickey 17, the premise is essentially still the same. But in the movie, by making him Mickey 17, you got to see him die 10 more times, which is what the director said. He goes, I thought it'd be interesting and funny to see him die in ridiculous ways, which is part of, like, it's a sci-fi film, so he's on a spaceship, and he basically gets all the undesirable or dangerous jobs because they know if he gets hurt or he dies, it just,
who cares? He just regenerates. Yeah, who cares?
So anyway, I enjoyed the movie. It's directed by Bong Joon-ho, who won the Oscar for directing Parasite a couple of years ago.
He's Korean, right?
Yes, he also directed Snowpiercer, which, again, a lot of people are probably familiar with that. I know you did not enjoy it when Yancey had you watch it, but anyway, so this was his latest offering. It had a huge cast, a lot of very talented performers in it. I enjoyed it. It was similar to the book, but not the same as the book. And so although I sort of knew the broad strokes of what was likely going to happen, the director and the writer and the adapter of the screenplay, they obviously made some choices, which I think for a movie were good choices, but it moved it a little away from some of the sci-fi stuff that I really enjoyed. So I liked it. I didn't love it. It's getting good critical reviews. It's obviously not making millions of dollars. It's not a Marvel movie or a franchise people are familiar with, but I have a feeling when this one hits the streamers and the Blu-ray, like, people are going to find it then and watch it and go, I really liked it. But it is a little on the long side. It's about 2 hours and 20 minutes, but no, it was good. I think it was really good. I think it's one of those movies that is not an immediate hit, but will have staying power. I don't think it'll be on anyone's top 10 list of all time, but I have a feeling people are going to go back to this one again and again once it's available more readily. So anyway, we went to the theater to see that. Then I saw a bunch of stuff. We watched Dazed and Confused on the 90s channel.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of people, when you talk about this movie, they talk about it with Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Dazed and Confused, sort of in the same breath. Like, one's about the life of students in the 70s, one's about the life of students in the 80s. There's a lot of sort of similar themes going on about just being a teenager at that time in your life. A lot of nostalgia for people who were alive and lived through those eras.
I disagree with that, by the way. But I mean,
I do too.
Oh, wow. So, good.
As much as I enjoy Fast Times at Ridgemont High, I think because I'm more of an 80s guy, I'd only ever seen this movie once before this week, and I remember not enjoying it. Yeah. And so when it was on again,
I was the same way.
The opening credits were on, and we said, you know what? We were both awake. Like, let's watch this movie.
Why not?
Because my wife really enjoys it. Now, she's a few years older than me, but anyway, watched it again, and I'm like, yeah, I think I enjoyed it a little more the second time through, but I overall didn't care for it. It had a great soundtrack, and all I kept thinking to myself was, if you strip the soundtrack out of this movie would be hot garbage. Which is probably a hot take. Some people I know really enjoy this movie, but
yeah, I'm the same way. I know
favorite.
A lot of people really like this movie. I don't like it either. I don't think it's really good.
A lot of actors were in it before they.
Yeah, very seminal for sure.
Which I think is why a lot of people think they like this movie. But yeah, I would definitely challenge someone on that. Mm-hmm. What else did I see? Okay. Buddy of mine sent me a message. He goes, "Hey, there's this Dungeons and Dragons themed movie on Amazon. It's like an independent film. You guys should watch it. It's called Dudes and Dragons." Oh, and apparently it was backed as a Kickstarter. Like, it was a total fan-made, fan-supported, fan-funded film.
Okay.
And it was both hilarious and awful at the same time. And the more of a nerdy gamer you are, the more you'll get out of it, because there's a lot of stuff that is not necessarily winking to the camera, but if you're in the know, and you get the joke. So it was sort of a fun to watch it, but I felt stupider for having watched it. But anyway, if you're just looking for something stupid,
right?
Dudes and Dragons is on Amazon. So
okay.
It wasn't awful, but it was bad, but it was so bad that it made it good. And Luke Perry's in it for like the first 15 or 20 minutes, and he's amazing. So anyway, there was that one. Let's see, what else do we have a chance to watch? I watched a limited series that dropped on Netflix about a month ago. It stars Robert De Niro. It's called 0 Day.
Oh, I saw that on the thing. It looked interesting.
It got hyped a lot. So it's 6 episodes. They're about an hour apiece. And the idea is that there's a cyber attack that happens in the U.S. and Robert De Niro plays a recently resigned president. So he's out of office by choice. He chose not to run for re-election. And the Republicans, the Democrats are all fighting with each other about how best to handle it and how they don't trust the other side. So they bring him in as sort of a neutral third party. He's no longer in office. He's not running for office. And they want him to run this commission to try and investigate. And no matter what he finds, because he's got a reputation for being honest, he'll report it. And on its face, I like the idea and I was enjoying it, but I really didn't feel they stuck the landing. I felt the 6th and final episode really fell flat, and I was very disappointed with the ending. So, it has a big cast, but I have a hard time recommending it because I don't think it ended very well. We watched a really great movie on Crave HBO here in Canada called Quiz Lady, and it stars Awkwafina and Sandra Oh as sisters. And Awkwafina's character loves
Awkwafina. Who the heck is that?
She's a stand-up comedian who's become an actor. She's in a lot of
Isn't that like a bottle of water?
Yeah. Same
she's a tall drink of water, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
In any case,
all right.
She plays she plays a woman
who's have to Google this now.
Yeah, she's in love with like this quiz show. It's like basically like a Jeopardy, and what's his name? The guy who plays Anchorman. What's his name in real life? Crap, I'm blanking.
Will Ferrell?
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Will Ferrell plays basically like Alex Trebek type character, which is perfect since he played that on SNL.
On SNL, yeah.
And so it's these two sisters that like can't stand each other, but for reasons they need money. And so because the sister's so good at these game shows, they try and convince her to go on the show, and hilarity ensues. It was a cute little movie. It was good.
Okay.
If you have Crave and you get it for free, why not? It was enjoyable. There was enough in there to make it worthwhile. And then the last real movie before my documentary, I watched the final 3rd installment of the Venom movie franchise, which is part of the Sony Marvel universe, called Venom Last Dance. Now, I will admit, I have watched the first 2 Venom movies, and they both sucked. But as a comic book nerd, I kind of felt a certain amount of obligation to check them out.
Sure.
I watched the first one because I'm not a big fan of the character in the first place. So I'm like, okay, I watched the first one. It was barely passable. I watched the second one, and it was garbage. It was terrible. And then this third one came on, and I was like, you know what? Why not? I'm watching everything else this week. And I actually enjoyed it, a lot more than I expected to. I figured it was just going to be a straight up garbage movie. And it was actually pretty good considering what it is. I would say it was equally as good as the last few Marvel movies, which is not saying much because the last few Marvel movies have not really been fantastic, but it's definitely the best of the 3 Venom movies. And it wasn't trying to be more than it's supposed to be. It was just a straight up action movie with the alien Venoms and stuff like that. It was decent. It was fine. And it had Juno Temple from Ted Lasso is in it, and Chiwetel Ejiofor is in it as well. So again, you have a couple of character actors you look and you're like, oh, I know who these people are. And obviously Tom Hardy is Venom. So it's decent. Again, I watched it on Crave. If you've got it on your streamer, give it a chance. It's not too bad. And then finally I had a chance to watch a documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
Educate us, Derek, please.
All right. Well, it's sort of a cheat. So I watched the third season of the reality show Full Swing on Netflix, which is about golf. I think I may have mentioned when I watched the previous two seasons. So they basically get camera crews to follow a bunch of the professional golfers behind the scenes for an entire season. And then with the new golf season starting next month, they just dropped the new season 3, which is basically everything that happened last year. So if you're like me, I like golf, but I don't really follow it that closely. Like I'll watch the Masters, or if it's on a Sunday afternoon, I'll throw it on. Like I don't know who any of these people are. I can appreciate a good golf shot. It's great for me because I don't know anything about anybody. And so it was all brand new to me, super educational. I learned all about who the best golfers are and why this guy's good and why this guy's bad and the problems this guy's having and how much money that guy made and the ups and downs and the legacies. And it's great. Whereas someone like my brother, who is a huge golf nut, he golfs every day in the summer. He loves golf. It's one of his favorite sports. I asked him if he watched it. He's like, yeah, but I watched it like it's 7 1-hour episodes. He goes, I watched 7 hours and I didn't learn a thing I didn't already know. I'm like, okay, he's obviously a super fan. He's not the audience. If you're like me, that's a target audience. Someone who's not, a super duper follow it every week golf guy, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. So if that sounds like something you might like, check out Full Swing season 3 on Netflix. Well, check out all 3 seasons, right. But new season just dropped.
Before I get into I have a question. Did you watch the Oscars at all?
I did. I did what I've done the last few years where I recorded them and then the next day I watched them on high speed so I didn't have to watch all the boring acts that I wasn't interested in. And whenever somebody won that I either didn't know or didn't care what they had to say, I could just fast forward through it. So
that's a good idea.
3 hour and 15-minute telecast took me about an hour and 10 minutes to get through.
Nice.
And it was perfect.
Good.
And then, of course, I immediately went online and listened to some of the reviews in the podcast. People were like, oh, my God, this part was boring. And that part was boring. And I'm like, oh, I fast forward through all that stuff.
I thought Conan O'Brien did a really good job.
Yeah, I had no objection to him. Again, I find most of the hosts they've had are usually pretty good with what they've got. But no, Conan did a really good job. And I liked that. Again, I hadn't seen, and this is a problem with the Oscars the last few years, is I just haven't seen a lot of the movies. So like I haven't seen Anora, but I had heard the buzz. And then when it ended up winning all these awards, everyone's like, oh yeah, it was the favorite for this. And it was right in the mix for that. And I'm like, I'll have to take your word for it. Like I didn't know anything about it. And then the fact that the guy ended up winning, literally one guy won 4 Oscars.
He won like the producer, director, writer, like it was editor. It was great. Oh man. I don't think anyone's ever done that before.
It's never been done before.
Yeah.
Never been done for the same movie.
Right.
Walt Disney won 4 Oscars in the same year for 4 different things in 4 different categories. But they were saying starting next, so the Oscars have been tweaking the categories a little bit over the last few years. And apparently next year they're going to be giving out an Oscar for best casting. And they were saying if this year that had been in there, this guy did all the casting for the movie. And they're like, there's a really strong chance he would have won for that as well. But they're like, timing being what it is, he still won 4 for the same movie. And they said, think of it this way. This guy has more Oscars than Steven Spielberg. And I'm like, ooh, that's certainly one way to look at it.
That's crazy, eh? Wow.
But yeah, no, I mean, I haven't seen the movie, so I can't say one way or the other if I think they made the right call or not. But I listened to a lot of podcasts this week. I read a lot of articles. And
are you inspired to make me watch the movie?
I definitely want to see it, but I'm not enough to go and pay to see in the theater. I'm like, it'll hit one of these streamers eventually that I already paid for, so I'm going to wait.
Okay, well, for me, on a previous podcast, Eric, I want to mention, remember when we had author Kean Cruz come on?
Dad Bod?
Yeah, Dad Bod, and we discussed TV dads. He mentioned his all-time favorite TV dad was the dad from Bluey, the animated Australian TV show. And it kind of always stuck with me. And so recently, my youngest son discovered this show on Disney+. He's a little bit too old for it, but he really likes it. He's like, Dad, I really like this show. So I watched a bunch of episodes with him. And the episodes are really short. Like some of them are only like 5 minutes long. So it's a really, really good show. Actually, have you ever seen it, Derek?
No, well, I mean, I'm aware of it, but no, I've never watched it, and but I know about it, and I know it's a huge phenomenon. Like people just love it of all ages.
I thought it was pretty good, but I do have a take on it, and so my take on it is this: like I said, I like it, but it sets really unrealistic expectations, especially in regard to the amount of time that parents spend with their kids. Because the dad in this show spends all this time playing with his kids, and he's helping them to do like crafts and make believe, and he uses all this time to like teach them and support them. I can barely last 5 minutes playing with my kids before I totally lose my and I'm sure I'm not alone. Listen, if you're like me and you can barely get through playing with your kids, don't worry. Bluey sets a totally unrealistic expectation for parents out there. You know, that's what I think. Or maybe I'm just a bad dad. I don't know.
But Chris, would you not think that this is more of the high bar? It's like, hey, you know, for parents, if you are not spending enough time with your kids, this is what you should be aspiring to. And maybe it's a reminder, because I mean, it sounds like you spend a fair amount of time with your kids, but I read a lot online where from teachers where they're like, a lot of parents barely even know their kid's name. They don't spend any time with them. So it's like, maybe it should be a reminder for some parents, like, hey, maybe I should be spending more time with my kids.
Yeah, I guess maybe.
Just a thought.
Or maybe you need to do more of this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
Derek, did you hear that our friend Joe went on the Dolly Parton diet?
No.
It really made Jolene.
It's so disrespectful given the timing. You're terrible. You're a bad dad.
Oh, man, you thought I was going to say it gave him giant, didn't you? Water.
Fall Guy.
No spoilers, man. No spoilers.
No spoilers. I won't spoil it. I'd rather watch Heather Thomas on the TV show.
P. Diddy, and then he became Diddy, and now he's just like rapey.
You're going to get bleeped anyway.
I don't hate disco, but man, I hate Xanadu.
Or not to be confused with Crisscross.
Swing low, sweet chariot.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not buying the Chris McBride soundtrack.
Okay. So this week it was over to me to pick a movie for us to watch and review. And last time we did our top 5 worst movie titles. My number 1 was Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo. So it seemed like a natural fit for us to watch that movie and review it in depth here on the podcast. So going into this, before we get into too much, Derek, I want to ask you a question. Had you ever seen this movie before this week?
No, I'd never seen this movie before this week.
Had you ever seen Breakin' 1?
No, and maybe that was part of the problem, is I was so lost.
Because I had never seen this movie either, so I thought it would be kind of interesting to go back and watch this. So I want you to give me a brief, high-level view of the movie before we break it down in detail. Okay? Before you break it down, no pun intended. Yeah. So Derek, what are your initial thoughts on Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo? Take it away.
All right. So it is definitely of its time, both because of the way it looks and the way it sounds. And that's not necessarily a criticism of it. It's just, it's a fact. Like a movie from 1984, most movies from 1984, especially, popcorn movies, we'll call it that for lack of a better term, something that's not a genre movie, not a period piece. It's just something that's a contemporary setting, is going to look and feel and sound a certain way because that's how most movies looked and felt and sounded. Sure. Now, this one may not be the best example of that, but it is definitely an example of that. The script was very straightforward, A to B to C to D to E, and we're done. Like there were no real twists or turns or surprises. And anyone who got to the end and didn't see that coming has never seen a movie before in their entire life. The performances were what you would expect from people who really have never been in anything else except, I assume, Breakin' 1. Again, everybody's trying. You got to give them credit for that. But this is not something I would be rushing out to see. I was never rushing out to see it the first time. I'm certainly not going to be rushing out to see it a second time. There were some things. In here that I don't want to say I liked, but some things that I enjoyed or some things that I found, some positivity with. But overall, not a great movie. But I didn't expect it to be. So it's that sort of managing my own expectations. I had such a low bar going in, like it had nowhere to go but up, and it did go up a tiny bit, but again, it's one of those things where it's that joke where you're always, Star Wars 2, Electric Boogaloo. Like,
Sure.
It's a part of the pop culture. So I kind of felt that I owed it to myself to see it just so that I could be more in the know if I'm going to use that term.
So I want to pull back the curtain on this a little bit, because you and I usually never share our takes on movies before we come into the studio. We each watch them. We come in blind because we want to just talk about it. However, I'm going to rat you out a little bit here.
Uh-oh. So
this week, you actually sent me a text, and you said, I watched your movie, and it... So that clearly indicated to me...
That doesn't sound like something I would say.
No. So it clearly indicated to me that you hated this movie. And I asked you for...
Hate is a strong word.
So is... That's a strong word, too.
It's contextual. You read that out of context.
Apparently. So then you come on here, you're like, oh, it was of its time. It wasn't so bad. It was actually a little bit better than what I thought. I'm like, that's not what you said to me the other day. So anyway... I had never watched this movie, like I said, and I think I never watched it. Like, I was 14 years old when this movie came out, and it was just never something that appealed to me back then. And I know this is really hard to believe, Derek, knowing me, based on my toned physique. I was never much of a break dancer.
No.
Hard to believe. Yeah,
it's
true.
Say?
It's true. So it was just never something that appealed to me, and then there was like that whole running gag, like you said, about, the title. And they put Electric Boogaloo at the end. Mm-hmm. Mike Myers was originally going to name his sequel The Spy Who Shagged Me. He was going to call it Austin Powers 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Nice.
Yeah, it was the working title of the film. So the movie's always been this long-running joke. So that being said, I finally sat down. I watched it yesterday for the first time ever. And guess what?
You loved it. Every minute of it.
I loved it.
Of course you did.
I thought it was awesome. Oh my God. Where has this movie been my whole life? Oh man. You don't like it. You know who you are, Derek? You're like the developers who want to shut down miracles. That's all you are. I'm telling you. So.
Well, hang on. Wait. Had you seen part one? Because I was lost. Like part two, I just came in. I'm like, who are all these characters? What's going on? Like, I felt like I was really missing something. No, you didn't feel that way?
No, I've never seen Breakin' 1, and I didn't feel like that coming into this. I was like, cool. I picked it up right away. It was like, it was what it is. Okay, so let's go back to 1984, shall we? Number one movie at the box office that year. Any guesses?
Was it Ghostbusters?
It was Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was number 2. Gremlins, number 3. The Karate Kid, number 4. And Police Academy rounded out the top 5.
Saw all those movies in the theater. Every one of them.
And then from there, 6 to 10 were Footloose, Beverly Hills Cop, because it came out in December. So it made most of its money the next year. Then number 8 was Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Number 9, Terms of Endearment. And number 10, Romancing the Stone.
I didn't see any of those ones in the theater. Wow. Talk about a sharp decline.
I know. So we go down to Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo. It finished all the way down in 102nd spot. Just below Hard Bodies and The Pope of Greenwich Village, and just above Swing Shift. So, I
don't know any of those movies.
Yeah, wow. Now, to be fair, the film only made $6.7 million in the calendar year of 84, because it wasn't released until December 21st. So
I thought you were going to say it was released in like February.
No. If you count the money it made after the calendar changed in 85, it made $15 million. So it made 5 times its budget, because it was only a $3 million movie. And the thing was too, Breakin' came out in 1984, and 5 months later, Breakin' 2 came out. So it's safe to say they kind of rushed this one. You could say.
I think that's safe to say.
But this is basically like an 80s version of the old Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney, let's put on a show musicals.
Yeah, of course.
That's exactly
the Little Rascals. Come on. We all knew where this was going.
So let's start with the title. What the hell does the title even mean?
Well, I had to look it up, but...
What'd you find?
Well, I found that Boogaloo is apparently a term that came out in the 60s. It's like a dance style, like a style of music.
But it's like a funk dance style.
Well, there's different ones. Yeah, I think it wanted to say it was like James Brown was one of the people that sort of came up with this term, or the term that was assigned to the music and the way people were dancing to his music. But yeah, it's one of those things where this terminology, this definition happened, but it wasn't a big enough phenomenon to become like a mainstream thing, and then it was like years later it got picked up for like some of the breakdancing stuff, because a lot of the breakdancing music was like inspired by funk and like that kind of stuff. So it's sort of the term came back, which I assume is why they used it in the movie. Like the characters, you said one of the performers, his name.
So the guy that played Turbo,
or something, right?
The guy that played Turbo, his real name is Michael Boogaloo Shrimp Chambers.
Yeah.
So that's why I thought, is it partly named after him? Which case would be dumb. Like that'd be like naming your sequel Star Wars 2 Prowse's Revenge. Like, you're not going to name it after like one of the guys that played like a secondary part.
But I found that there was like I looked up and there's apparently a list of like popular dancers from each sort of era, like the early 70s, late 70s, early 80s kind of thing. And they had like all their dancing street nicknames. Sure. And like a bunch of them had that term Boogaloo in there with their street names. So he wasn't the only one. He was just the only one in this movie.
Well, I looked it up. The term Boogaloo has taken on a different meaning recently. So Boogaloo, I'm going to read this for you verbatim.
Yeah,
okay?
I read this. This is good.
As early as 2012, right-wing extremists in the United States began using the term Boogaloo, or simply Boog, as a dog whistle to describe a rebellion against the American government, implying a desire for a sequel to the first American Revolution, coming to widespread attention in late 2019. So groups and individuals subscribing to this ideology are part of the Boogaloo movement, who are often referred to colloquially as Boogaloo boys, or get this, Chuds.
Jeez.
Chud. It was another movie on my list of worst movie titles of all time. These right-wingers glom onto the worst pop culture. I tell you. Like Chud, Kid Rock, Scott Baio, that Hercules guy. Just, jeez. Oh. All right, so let's talk about the cast of this film. Lucinda Dickey is the top billed performer in the movie, even though she's not even really the lead character.
Is that the woman who plays Kelly?
Kelly, yeah. I'm not sure why she's top billed. It's not like she was a huge star or anything. She has a grand total of 6 IMDb credits to her name. So
2 of which are Breakin and Breakin.
Breakin and Breakin 2 are 2 of them. And the other one, she did Grease 2. And then after she did Breakin, she did Ninja 3, The Domination, Breakin 2, Electric Boogaloo, Cheerleader Camp, and then Perry Mason, The Case of the Defiant Daughter, a TV movie. That's it. That's all she did. So I thought she was interesting because, like, for me, like, I thought, like, she was gorgeous. Like, but she was, like, 80s gorgeous. You know what I mean? Like, that hair, like, the way it was parted and, like, feathered back. I mean, so 80s. Oh my God.
It was
terrible. Her hair was so bad. There was one scene in it, I remember, where her hair was kind of wet and it was like slicked back and she looked amazing. I'm like, oh my God, keep that look. Next scene, she got the hair feathered back again. I'm like, oh geez. But that was an 80s thing, you know?
It very much was.
Oh man. So she was there she was there because of her looks and her dancing, because it certainly wasn't for her acting talents. Although none of them can act a lick.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I kept thinking that too. I'm like, this movie, again, it's a sequel, so you bring back people from the first one. But
sure.
The first one, I assume, they basically said, look, we're not getting any Oscar winners in this movie. Let's just get people that can actually dance. And so that was my assumption of how most of the movie was cast. Again, they're dancing in the 80s style, a lot of breakdancing and such, but it was decent enough. I didn't have any issues with it.
So my issue with her was this, like, she technically does nothing in this movie. Like, this movie would work perfectly fine without her. Like, she doesn't really have anything to do. She doesn't, like, drive the story in any way. Like, she's not consequential and all that. I don't know. That's what I thought. And
she brings white privilege to the movie.
Yes, definitely that's an issue. Actually, we'll come back to that in a second, because I think that's an important thing. Let's come back and talk about that. That's good. I want to know though, with her, what's the deal with her and Ozone? Like, are they a thing? Aren't they? Like, when they first see each other at the beginning of the movie, they kiss, and then later there's a scene where they're walking, they're holding hands. But then what's the deal with her fiance? He just like comes out of nowhere. Again, maybe you had to see the first movie.
Yeah, I don't know. That was one of the things where I thought, well, maybe if I saw the first one, there was more of this relationship. But yeah, it's like, are they boyfriend and girlfriend? Because the guy's ex is all like huffy and puffy. Oh, don't come near him. It's like, well, like what's happening here? But
yeah, because you're right.
It didn't seem all that relevant to the overall plot, but maybe it did. Like maybe that was supposed to just be, oh, there's this added conflict. Like, what are they going to do?
Yeah,
really?
when that jealous girl tells him to stay away from her, he's like, her and I are old news. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there was that. Okay, so let's move on to Adolfo Quinones, or as he's known, Shabadoo. He played Ozone. Mm-hmm. He's got a few more movie credits than Lucinda Dickey, but not many, let me tell you. So he was in an episode of Married with Children, episode of Miami Vice. He was in the movie Tango and Cash, and he was in Chaka Khan's music video, I Feel For You, as a dancer. Surprise, surprise. This dude cannot act. Like, my God, that scene when he gets mad at the developers and they have to like hold him back, he is the worst actor. Oh my God. But the thing is, I love it. It's so campy and cheesy. I just love it. Oh, I ate it all up. And then Michael Chambers, who was Boogaloo Shrimp, he did mostly music videos. He was in Chaka Khan's video too.
Yeah.
A couple of TV shows other than that. So here's the thing that I had with the two male leads. They have zero charisma. Like zero. At least Kelly's good looking. These guys are not like real handsome guys. You know, they don't seem like two guys you'd put in a movie.
Again, you cast them for their dancing.
Yeah, but again, in a movie though, you have to act and you have to play characters and drive the story. And they really struggle with that. So there was always there's the supporting cast. Did you notice who was playing the rapper, Ice-T?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Ice-T. He's so thin and he looks a little different because he was also in the end again when they did the show at Miracles. Mm-hmm. And then Ken Olsen, I want to give a shout out to. He's a guy that worked for the city. He was a bald guy with glasses. He used to do small roles on TV shows, like he was on Three's Company and Maude and Give Me a Break and Different Strokes. And he was also in Spaceballs.
He was?
Yes. Remember when Princess Vespa's wedding? He was the usher there at that. I remembered him. So
sure. If you say so, I believe you.
It's true. And the thing was for me, the rest of the supporting cast all seemed like they were plucked out of a local community theater group. They just weren't very strong. But it added to the campy fun of it all. One of my favorite characters in the whole movie was at the end when they were driving the bulldozer and they were gonna, and the thing was, in the bulldozer there's like the construction guy driving it, and then there's the developer in the thing with him, and he's like, yeah, go in and like smash that stage. And then that's when Turbo was standing in front, and the guy was like, you could tell wasn't an actor. It almost felt like he was a construction worker that they hired, and then we're like, okay, drive into that kid, and he's like, you hired me to do a job. I'm not killing a kid. It felt like kind of real. It just, that guy, the whole supporting cast just was so sophomoric. So I have a question for you. Is this a musical? What do you think?
So this is a good segue to the thing I was going to bring up.
Okay.
So in a musical, traditionally, not that I'm an expert, but in a musical, you'll have, the actors are doing their thing, and then for no reason at all, they burst into song, and rah, 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 the song talks about what's happening, and then it goes back to whatever they're talking about. And like nobody sort of turns to each other and goes, why did we just sing that? Like, you just accept that this happened and you move on. Or in some musicals, it's nothing but songs. But some of the more, the more recent ones anyway, you have story, 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 song, story, 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 song. So, and you call those a musical. The term I thought of when I was watching this is a dance-ical, because for no reason at all, they would break into a dance number all the time. Like there was like 6 or 7 of them, they're just doing their thing, and then bam, they break into a dance number, and it happens. And then when it's done, nobody acknowledges it. No one says like, hey, why were we dancing for no reason? So I just kept thinking, I'm going to call this a dance-ical. So
yeah, because the actors don't actually sing. In those scenes. No. So that's interesting.
And some of these dance numbers were more entertaining than others, and we can get into the specifics in a minute. Sure. But yeah.
I thought it was interesting, the opening sequence with over the credits with all the body parts. Although I thought it was weird to show body parts close up, like feet and arms and hands and midriffs, because the whole thing for breakdancing is how much it involves the whole body. Mm-hmm. Like it seemed odd to me. That seemed a little disconnect. And the one thing that also stood up was remember when they broke into dance And it was like everyone in the city joins in right near the beginning. There's like a construction worker and a cop. It's like the village people are doing a dance number.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
So yeah, that was interesting. But you're right. Like it's not, there's no singing. So it's more like a dancicle.
Yeah, like
that's cool.
The music was playing, and like the music in some of it was an actual song, but nobody in the scene was singing the song. Everyone was just dancing to the music.
Right. You often talk about, inclusivity and how movies, are they inclusive? It seems that on the whole, this movie's pretty inclusive. Like there's a lot of representation across many, like there's different cultures and races, even mimes are represented, but it's still misogynistic as hell.
The mimes need a voice in Hollywood, damn it.
They do. There you go. I feel like the movie's still very misogynistic.
Oh, of course it is. It was the 80s.
And the scene when Ozone and Turbo are practicing their moves on that like life-size doll. That was so bizarre.
That made me laugh. That was funny.
And they kept intercutting with the real girls, and then they fight over the girls, and they end up like ripping the doll's arms off. So yeah, that was one of the dance numbers that I actually enjoyed watching. Like because it was something I had never seen before, and I was like, considering what this movie is, I didn't expect to see anything where I was like, oh, there's something new. And that was something that I mean, I'm sure it's been done before, but it felt appropriate for this film, given where it was in the story. And it was an interesting way to let these two guys do some dancing. And yeah, it was one of those ones where I was like, oh, that was a clever way to do it. I wonder I just was thinking about this. What was the deal with Ozone's zipper? And the reason I'm going to ask for this, there was two scenes. So remember the scene later in the movie when they're eating pizza and I think the dad comes into the apartment and Kelly's there with Ozone and they're eating pizza.
First
of all,
no shirt on.
He's got no shirt on eating pizza, whatever. That was weird. And then he stands up and his pants are unzipped. So he zips them up. And I was like,
I didn't even catch that.
Okay, what was going on here? Immediately, the dad doesn't even mention it. If I was the dad and I walked in on my daughter and some guy and they were eating pizza and he zipped up his pants, I'd immediately think, So there was that. But then earlier, right before that scene that we just talked about, when they were dancing with the doll and everything, remember Turbo says something, can you show me some moves on, how to make it with a girl and all this? Well, Ozone's laying on the bed, so he's like, okay, so he gets up and his pants are unzipped. Again, he has to zip them up. It was weird. Why is it because his pants are so tight he's got to unzip them when he lays down or sits down? Because these two guys had a close relationship. They're friends. I don't care how close my relationship is. I'm not unzipping my pants when we're just hanging out together. It was just
I'm gonna hold you to that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So anyway, I thought that was odd. I have a question for you.
Yeah, man.
Miracles. What exactly was that? It seemed weird to me. There was dancing and mime, and boxing. It's a community center, but it was what was it? It was everything all kind of mishmashed into one.
Yeah, I think that's probably where they had different ideas from scriptwriters about what it should represent. I think the idea was just all of these kids from these, adjacent neighborhoods that may have different interests and have different backgrounds, different cultures. It gives them a chance to come to this place, this safe haven, away from violence and away from bad influences, and do what they want to do. They want to have a gym where they work out and box. Great. They want to have a place where they can be artsy and dance. Great. They want to just sit down and read a book. Great. But to your point, the likelihood of a place like this existing where all of these sort of people with these drastically different interests would hang out together and unite for a common cause just seems ridiculous. It's a total movie trope. It's almost like the assumption, it almost feels like, and it probably was, an old white man was writing this and went, this is how I think, people who live in these communities would act. And it's dude, do some homework. Come on.
One thing I actually liked was instead of actually fighting, how the two gangs have a dance off.
They just dance for no reason.
I know. It's like the movie You Got Served, which I've never seen, but isn't that what they do in that one too? They do these dance offs together. So that scene, there's Electro Rock was the other gang, and then they do this thing and they're combat. And then they do this dance off together, where they almost mimic that they're fighting and using weapons and stuff, but they're just dancing in front of each other. And then it's TKO. And I'm it's not really a TKO. It didn't really seem like they got served. don't know. It didn't seem like a big win. So,
but I like that it was, in this case, it's like the lyrics of the song were reflective of the action. Again, it's not going to win an Oscar, but it was clever that somebody at least had enough insight that they realized this is how we can do this. This is how we can make this scene work. You know, instead of having violence, because again, they're bringing people into the theater to watch people dance. Like it's like going, you know, if you're going to see a musical, you're going to watch people sing. You don't really care if they're out on the farm or in outer space. You want to hear the songs. So I think that was the same with this. Is they really I imagine it was marketed very clearly. Like, do you like breakdancing and other forms of street dance? This is the movie for you. And we promise we're going to do 8 or 10 numbers where people are just going to break into dance for no reason.
And speaking of nobody winning an Oscar, that scene when the girl says to Ozone, she's like, I want you to stay away from that other girl. Like, just so bad. Yeah, nobody's winning an Oscar in this movie. Okay, so I was doing some math. I'm a business guy, as you know. You know, and so I decided to do some math. So they needed $200,000 to save Miracles. Yes. And they did a fundraiser, and they raised $7,000 in one day. They were doing like lemonade and car wash and balloon animals and stuff like that. And they had a 30-day grace period. So if they just kept up the fundraisers, $7,000 a day for 30 days is $210,000. They hit it. Like, that's all they needed to do. They didn't need Kelly.
Well, I think we're supposed to believe that montage was more than just one day, but it was
one day. They spent one day out there doing all that stuff.
Well, I also got the impression that this was probably people from their own community that were coming out to support them initially. And it's like, yeah, that's great. You've spent $10 on a car wash or whatever, but you're not coming out to get your car wash 30 days in a row, partly because you don't need it done. And partly because it's like, I don't have 300 extra bucks laying around.
Right. Oh, maybe that was it.
I think that was probably the thinking behind. Again, it wasn't explicitly spelled out in the script, but
you kind of figured
my interpretation was your first day is probably going to be your best day, and you're going downhill from there. So, but no, I thought about that as well. I'm like, well, they seem to do okay initially, but yeah.
Because that was got me thinking, like, they don't need her. They don't need this, you know, this white savior to come in here and do this.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about this.
That's where it was going. We all saw that coming. Eventually her rich white dad is going to have to pony up some money, or she's going to find some way to get the money from her dad, which, you know, great. All right. You can, you know, I have helped those who need help. It's like, up yours, man. It's people like you that cause this problem in the first place.
We'll talk about that in a sec. I want to come back to that. I'm going to pull a note. I want to come back because I do have a thought on that one. I want to talk a little bit about the sound in the movie, though, because the sound is really bad. It's like loud, and then it's quiet, and then it's loud again. And there was also, I'm sure you noticed, there was a lot, because you used one of your pet peeves. There was a lot of ADR in this movie. Like, I noticed a lot of it. That Hispanic girl, the love interest for Turbo there, all of her lines are ADR.
Yeah.
And apparently she spoke her lines in English and Spanish, but her voice was so quiet that they had to ADR her. And
oh, really?
I am positive that they used ADR for the fiance too. Remember that scene in the house?
Oh, yeah. His name was Derek.
Yes, it was.
Made me laugh.
It felt like they were trying to like dub his voice and make him like more white and pompous or something. Like, I was like, dude, they're using ADR here.
Yeah.
And that scene too, her family is so rich, she has to ring the doorbell of her own house and the maid answers it. And I was like, well, maybe that's because she doesn't stay at home, you know, because she's got her own place. But then the dad rings the doorbell and the maid lets her in or lets him in. So it was just weird. It was weird. The way that the dad and the fiance treat Ozone and Turbo during dinner is so racist.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh my God. He's like, you people, and you just get money and squander it all away. Like, you're such musical people. And all this, I was like, oh my God. Okay. Let's talk about some scenes from this film, because there were some good ones in there.
There were a handful of good ones. Yep.
The first scene in the movie, when they first kind of meet up and then they talk about miracles, some of the locals, they do this miracle rap. And it totally sounded like MC Mike or G and DJ Swen.
Yes, I felt that with a lot of the rapping that was happening.
Yeah, I was like, we're going to ring a dong for a holiday. I was like, oh my, that sounds so much like those guys. So there was that. But then one of the scenes that I really liked, although I still think one of my favorite scenes was, again, the guy and the bulldozer at the end. But one of my second favorite ones was the dancing around the room scene. Did you like that scene? What do you think?
Where where they're like the room where
Turbo, it's clearly it's on a gimbal, and they're using a stationary cam, but he's like dancing all around, then goes up the wall and goes around the scene.
Yeah,
I love that.
That
scene.
was my favorite scene of the movie.
Loved it.
I thought it was clever. Again, we've seen it done better since, and in the computer age, you could do that with your eyes closed. But to do it in 1984, I don't think it's something that had been done in very many, if any, really big movies up until that point. Like Lionel Richie did it in the Dancing on the Ceiling video,
right?
But you hadn't really seen that before, and so I thought they did a really good job of it. Again, and it was to music, and it was dancing, like there was, and it made sense given the lyrics that he's like, he's imagining being in love with this girl, and it's like he's so, it seemed like the right gimmick to use to express his emotion. And I thought, you know what, considering how crappy this movie is, this scene actually is doing a really good job.
Well, funny enough, they were actually doing something very similar on another movie in the studio right beside them, because they were making A Nightmare on Elm Street in the studio beside them.
Okay.
And they were using this set on Nightmare on Elm Street. Remember the scene when that happens?
Yes.
So the people that are making Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo are like, hey, can we borrow this set for a minute and like use it? And they're like, sure thing. So if you look in the background, Freddy's glove is up on the back wall. It's like an Easter egg. Nice. Thing. I also like when the girl comes in and you can tell that they've used like a ton of hairspray on her to like prevent her hair from like going up.
And she's like leaning right against the wall.
She's attached to the wall with like a harness, So, but I liked that scene too. I thought it was pretty good.
No, I thought it was really good. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it.
And I like how they try to make it all like they're from the streets and they speak like that. When Ozone asked Strobe, that was his like rival in the other gang. He's like, he asked him for help. He's like, you got to come and join us. We got to save Miracles. And the guy's like, Ozone, don't lay the jive on me, man. It's like, oh, geez, this dialogue.
Was Barbara Billingsley here all of a sudden?
Exactly. And then Mac himself a pro slick. And then Ozone says to Kelly later, he's like, I can't hang back, baby. You dig? It's like, oh my God, this dialogue is so awful. But it makes
so
it
white.
It's so good.
It's clearly white guys writing for not white guys who have no idea what they're talking about.
But I still feel like this movie kind of fits in this like perfect little niche of being like so bad it's good without like going too far in either direction. It just seems to hit this sweet spot for me. Remember the scene too when he puts up that sign, it's like Save Our Streets.
Yes.
On the Miracles rooftop, and he does like the dance, like
again,
up there.
Dance Skull breaks into dance for no reason.
But it was the Electric Boogaloo song. And then he looks at the camera, zero charisma. Like I was like, my God, like he has no charisma. And then he's like, Miracles is more than a piece of property. Miracles is people. I'm like, so Miracles is like Soylent Green? It's people. Like, this movie is so cheesy. But again, I love the camp. I love all of it.
Camp is a good way to describe it. That's the first
very
time.
Campy.
Yes, it's very campy. Yeah. And I can see how some people might return to it. Again, sort of like, not that I think it's got sort of cult following of some other movies of its time, but I could definitely see how people are like, this is my guilty pleasure. I get wasted on the weekend every 5 or 6 months and I just throw it on and I do my breakdance moves while I'm watching it. It's like, sure. If that's what makes you have a good time, do it, man. You do you.
So I think right after that scene too, Turbo steals the construction worker's his lunchbox, and he runs away and he falls down the stairs. So the fall. We got to talk about the fall. The stuntman is so obvious, 20 years older and about 100 pounds heavier.
Yeah,
dressed in Turbo's outfit.
They should have just done what they do on Benny Hill. You get a dummy, you dress him in the clothes, you throw him down the thing. It looks ridiculous, and then you cut back to the real guy when he hits the bottom. Like, at least then it would have been funny. Yeah,
that was crazy. And then also right after that, he goes to the hospital. So they come to see Turbo in the hospital. He's like in traction. The Hispanic girl's in the closet. I was like, what the hell? What was that about? I didn't understand that at all. Like, why is she hiding in there? They're allowed to have visitors. I didn't understand any of that. And then, of course, another musical number breaks out. He starts like popping and locking in traction.
I actually like the musical number in the hospital. Again, it was ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, like the nurses and the doctors.
He's got a broken leg and he's dancing all around like that. It was just so over the top. But again, by that point, you're like, well, I think I know where this is going. Yep. Nailed it on the first guess.
Yeah, the crippled people are dancing, and even the dead come back to life. Remember all the women in the maternity ward? They get up, they're like all pregnant, they're dancing around. Probably not the safest thing for them to be doing.
No, and all the nurses are like basically strippers with hardly any clothes
all those sexy nurses and like joining in. You're like, what? And then right after that Hispanic girl, she tries to help Turbo like get up. And he just keeps like falling on her. I was like, oh my God. And again, I just fell on you again. I was like, geez, man. And she puts him in that laundry cart. I don't know why. Why does she need to smuggle him out of the hospital? Can't she just get him discharged? And then they go in the elevator and the nurse stops her. And then Turbo pops out and does this Woody Woodpecker impression. I'm like, why did he do that?
He had done that earlier too when he stole the lunchbox.
Yeah, it make no sense. I don't know.
Maybe it's from the first part. I don't know.
Maybe we missed something again. So, like you said, so the dad offers to pay the money. But he says to her, he goes, I will give you the money to save miracles, he says to Kelly, if you go to Princeton. Why did she turn it down? I don't understand that. If she really cared about that community, take the money, give it to them, and like go on to Princeton. I don't understand why she didn't accept it. That was confusing to me.
Yeah, maybe she was really in love with Ozone. Like, I don't know. That wasn't clear from the movie, but maybe that's what we're supposed to read into it. I don't know. And who's to say she can't have a long distance relationship? So go away to school, get your education, and then make something of your life and come back and help them. Like
follow your dream. Like, because she wasn't a break dancer. She was more of a traditional dancer doing like Broadway dancing. And she had an opportunity to go to Paris and like everything else. Like, take the opportunity. Here's your chance to save miracles and then like still go on and follow your dream. It was weird. I thought it was interesting with the bulldozer scene again, because I like that one so much. Howard from Channel 3 News.
Yeah, I saw that. I heard that too. I'm like, did I hear that correctly? And then he introduces himself again. I'm like, no, that's what it was.
And of course, the developer changes his tune when the press is involved. So, Derek, man, back in the days when the media actually had the ability to change public opinion for good. Oh man, not like now. So they put on this show to save miracles. But again, here's the thing, like Kelly's dad sees them on TV and decides, they're doing something, good that they believe in. So he goes down and he cuts them a check. So again, it's just white saviorism. That's all it is. Right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, like it wasn't like they did anything. Like, they did their $7,000. Like you said, it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't repeatable. You couldn't do 7,000 every day because of their neighborhood, apparently. So this guy just had to come in and cut him a check. It's just like, I don't know, man. And the ending of the movie, when they did that song, I Believe in the Beat, which actually was a pretty good song, I thought. Mm-hmm. They should have done a final shot with like Kelly and Ozone kissing and Turbo and that Hispanic girl kissing, and then just pan up. And you see all the balloons flying. It would have been perfect.
And the sign, the SOS sign.
Yeah, but they didn't do that. And so the problem is there was no resolution at all for the characters. Like, well, that's because
they were leaving it open for Breakin 3 Electric Boogaloo.
Oh, yeah. Electric Bigamore. So, and the other thing, too, I noticed when I was watching, it seemed like they wasted zero footage from this movie.
Yeah, I got that sense.
It's like they just shot a bunch of stuff and then just stitched it all together. Like every single frame of footage that they shot, they stitched into this movie one way or the other. That's what it felt like. They just kind of built the movie after the fact. So, so like I say, it's funny. I feel like I've just spent all this time talking about the negative things in the movie, but I still liked it. I thought it was great. I really did. I watched this for the first time, like I said yesterday. I would watch it again right now. I thought it was awesome.
Wow.
I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it for what it was. Again, I like the campy stuff. So do you want to give it a rating out of 10 for me, please? This should be interesting.
I'll give it a very, very generous 4.5. Not quite a pass, but close.
I would give it a 7. I'll give it a
I'll
give it a 7 out of 10. I really, really enjoyed this movie. So I'm glad I watched it. And again, every once in a while, like we go back and pluck these movies out of the 80s that I haven't seen. And sometimes it's for good reason. Every once in a while, there's one that surprised me. You surprised me with the one They Live. that one time because I hadn't seen that one. I was like, oh, I really like that one. And I liked this one too. I actually really enjoyed it. You don't need to see Breakin. You can just watch Breakin 2, Electric Boogaloo. It's on Amazon Prime, and I think it's on Tubi as well. So
yeah, I saw it was on Tubi as well.
Yeah, it's all good. I might even watch it again shortly. But anyway, on that note, what do you say that we do this?
Fun with Caveman.
All right, Derek, it was my movie, so it's over to you to have some fun with me. What do you got lined up for us?
All right, this one's a little new. It is a new thing we've never done before, and it's short though. I'm only gonna give you 10 questions on this.
All
one.
right,
so
sounds good.
So as you already mentioned, Electric Boogaloo has basically over time, because of its pop culture importance, has gained its own definition. So if I was to tell you the definition of this movie title is a common unofficial subtitle for any unnecessary sequel, you would say, oh, that's Breakin 2, Electric Boogaloo.
I think so.
So I've got 10 examples. I'm going to give you the definition of what it has become, and the answer is going to be the movie title. So a movie title has become a part of the lexicon.
Oh, okay. Right? Interesting.
And these are from, they're all over. There's some newer ones, some older ones, but for the most part,
that's interesting.
I think you're going to do pretty good.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you the definition, and I can give you the year the movie came out as a hint if you need it. Okay? So the first one, the definition is a romantic relationship that's physically dangerous, from 1987.
Would it be Fatal Attraction?
Yes, it would.
Oh, yes. Okay, cool. All
right, the next one.
Yep.
The definition is a catalog of all the things you want to do before you die.
Oh, the bucket list.
Yes.
I haven't seen that one, but that's got a couple of
2007.
Yep.
All right. Next one. Stripping until you're completely nude.
Stripping until you're completely nude. Can you give me the year?
It's from 1997, and we reviewed it on this podcast.
Oh, is it The Full Monty?
Yes.
You should have said, male nudity, I think.
Well,
would have thrown me off. I was thinking of striptease for some reason. But.
Yeah. All right. The definition is an obscene suggestion made in exchange for reward, usually money.
Indecent proposal.
Yes. From 1990.
Oh, I'm doing really well.
You're doing really good.
This is a really good.
Okay. This is for, the definition is an all-purpose declaration of triumph over one's opponents.
Year?
2004. And you already mentioned it during this podcast.
And it's a declaration. Give me the definition again.
All-purpose declaration of triumph over one's opponents.
I don't know.
You got served.
Oh, you got served.
You already said it in the podcast. I'm like, oh my God, you've heard of this movie?
Yeah. I heard of it. Yeah, I never really know what it meant.
All right. This one's from 1991. The definition is a go for broke gambit that one assumes is a suicide mission.
From 1991.
Yes.
Oh, go for broke gambit.
That one assumes is a suicide mission.
Oh, geez. I'm not sure. Don't know.
Apparently, Thelma and Louise. If you say we're doing a Thelma and Louise.
Oh, we're going to do a Thelma and Louise.
Apparently, it's been used in politics a lot since then.
Okay, cool.
All right. The definition, this is an oldie goldie. The definition is to cause a person, usually a woman, to doubt their sanity through the use of psychological manipulation.
Is it gaslighting?
Yes, gaslighting.
A lot of that going on these days.
Yep.
No,
from 1944. All right, we got a few left here.
Sure.
This one is actually from 2010 documentary.
Okay.
And the definition is to mislead someone online by pretending to be someone or something you're not.
Is that catfishing?
Catfish, yes.
Yes. Oh, okay. See, I'm young, I'm hip, and I speak the language of the streets.
Yeah, you wish. All right.
No, you know.
Okay, the definition. I got a couple easy ones coming in the stretch here. The definition is any repetitive situation, especially one that you feel you're trapped in.
Is it Groundhog Day?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And the last one, the definition is when you must choose between two equally desirable or undesirable options.
Sounds like the lesser of two evils.
It's not. It's from
can you give me the year?
1982.
1982. And definition again one more time, because 82.
When you must choose between two equally desirable or undesirable options.
Is it Sophie's Choice?
Yes.
Yay! The year really helped me on that one.
Yeah.
So that was good.
So that was it. There was 10.
Oh, those were really good.
Yeah, I think you only missed one.
Yeah, that was really interesting. So that was a good one. Okay, so next time out, it's time for another movie review. So it's over to you. I obviously brought us this gem, Breakin 2 Electric Boogaloo. So what have you got for us next time?
All right. We're going to go into our way back machine.
I like this. I like where this is going.
For a literal capital C classic from 1964.
Oh, wow. We're going way back. Okay.
Stanley Kubrick.
Oh.
Dr. Strangelove. Or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb.
Oh, wow. And guess what? I've never seen this film.
You had mentioned that you have never seen this, and it shocked me. It has been rated, it's got an 8.3 out of 10 on IMDb. I've seen this movie a few times. I think it's great. It won it was nominated for 4 Oscars. It's got a huge cast. Peter Sellers plays multiple parts. George C. Scott. Again,
Slim Pickens is in it too, isn't he?
Yeah. Yes, he is.
He rides the bomb, I believe.
Yeah, this movie is a classic in every sense of the word. Take it away. It's available on the Hollywood Suites. If you have those, you get it on demand. If you don't, it's available very cheaply on Amazon if you need to rent it. Yeah, I was shocked when you said, as a movie guy, I was shocked when you said you had not seen this before. Again, it's not the kind of movie you're just going to say, I'm just going to throw it on tonight. It's a capital F film. Like, it's an art movie, but it's important.
Kubrick was like that.
Kubrick was like that, yes. So, and the good news is it's only about 90 minutes long, which I think is perfect because, again, I don't want to say too much more about it, but take it away. We're not going to record next week because I'm taking a week off. I'm going on vacation.
Do some vacation.
So we'll come back in 2 weeks. We'll take a look at Dr. Strangelove in great detail. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. But if you haven't, we can talk about that. And I think we're going to find that even though the movie's 60 years old, there's a lot of relevant themes in this film that are more applicable today than they probably were 5 years ago. So.
Sounds good. All right. So we'll come back in 2 weeks' time. We will review Dr. Strangelove, and we'll see how that goes. I'm Chris McBrien. That's Derek Myers. On behalf of both of us and our producer, Sloth, we want to say thank you very much for taking the time to listen to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.